That the Senate now adjourn. Senator Back.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President, and I rise with pleasure to reflect on the decision of the Senate in the last few moments, voting 36 to 32 to abolish the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal. What is this tribunal about, Acting Deputy President? Well, the one thing we know it wasn't about was safety on roads. We know that already there is in place a heavy vehicle regulator, an instrumentality and a person highly respected in the industry. And in fact, if the then Labor government, under then Ms Gillard as the Prime Minister, was more interested in safety, she would have been more interested in working through the heavy vehicle regulator to be able to achieve what all of us in this place and all of us in this country know to be a very, very high priority, and that is the highest level of safety on the roads. But we don't have a circumstance here that's related to safety at all, Acting Deputy President, as has been eloquently stated by many people in this place and outside it. This was simply a bare-faced attempt by the then Prime Minister, Ms Gillard, to pay back to the unions, the Labor unions that were supporting her in 2011, and to give to them a tribunal which would force the end of owner drivers, the 34 or 35,000 owner drivers who are the backbone of the heavy transport industry in this country. They would have been forced into one of three circumstances: bankruptcy, either to become an employee of one of the larger companies, or indeed to have to themselves attempt to become larger and a larger employer. As was eloquently stated by Ms Grace Collier in an article recently, she gave the analogy of a small transport person moving livestock around rural areas. And she gave the analogy of this person charging, for example, around about $140 to $150 to pick up a load of sheep to take them to a market or bring them back from the market. As of the 4th of April, Acting Deputy President, what we actually saw was a circumstance in which, by law, that man wouldn't be charging about the $170, he would have to be charging about $740 as an owner driver. What would the farmer do? He would dispense with his services. And do you know the interesting thing, Acting Deputy President? If that farmer then engaged the services of a trucking company with a truck being driven by an employee, do you know the sort of fee that he would be charged? The original $174. The original $170. Just try and explain that to me, somebody on the other side, how the person who's been doing those deliveries for that time, for that price, would now be having to charge some $700 when indeed the farmer could go to a trucking company with an employee driver. Where's the increase in safety in that exercise? Can someone explain to me how it's all of a sudden a lot more safe if the first guy is now charging $740 rather than $170, but the employed driver can charge the same figure as the original, and he will be back in the game? All this was aimed to do, as we eloquently learnt this morning, when I participated in the rally and, in fact, the transit of trucks from the showgrounds into Parliament House. This was an attempt to get rid of owner drivers. Nothing more, nothing less, and it was shameful. It was shameful. Acting Deputy President, we now have a wonderful situation. As somebody said this morning when he looked around that crowd, he said, "I see people in this crowd who are day-to-day intense competitors. But here they are today, faced with the loss of their industry, faced with the loss of their homes, the loss of their properties, the loss of their trucking and the loss of their businesses. They want to come together for improving the industry. And let's do so. Let's do so. Let's use this new wave of enthusiasm and optimism across the industry to be able to achieve the increases we need." People speak of safety in the industry, and the best figures available to us, Acting Deputy President, is that some 85% of major events or incidents or affecting the trucks, accidents, etc., are not the fault of the truck driver. So let's put that to one side for a moment in dispensing with this nonsense about this argument having been about safety. But let's build on it, Acting Deputy President. I was absolutely privileged this morning to be in the company of a Mr Ian Haig, a trucking contractor from Tongala and Wagga, and also to meet a Mr and Mrs Greg Baker, and both of them absolutely full of the information that they were able to give me. And I said to them, how do we improve safety standards, because they are so important? They said to me, this is the point, Chris. First of all, in many instances, the trucking companies now use contractors to undertake their maintenance. Acting Deputy President, I ask the question, is it not possible to have a licensing system in place so that those service companies, the maintenance companies charged with responsibility of maintaining those trucks, are not themselves licensed and are the subject of independent audit to make sure that the standards are so high that when a truck comes out of their maintenance facility, it is ready to go on the roads and safe. It was suggested to the industry the other day that the trucking companies and the owner-operators should in fact be going over their own trucks after they've been the subject of $150 per hour servicing, just to go back and check it. That's not what we should be doing. And secondly, as a part of that, Acting Deputy President, we know that we have a very high level of regulation. But the drivers will tell you that those of them who are out on the roads, those of the inspectors, are often not focusing on where the important areas are. They're not focusing, for example, on driver behaviour. They're not focusing on logbooks. Put those inspectors, Acting Deputy President, into the maintenance facilities on an ad hoc and changing basis, so you don't get the friendships between the service organisation and the inspectors. And have those inspectors make sure the maintenance operators are in fact doing the work that is required. We have a circumstance with logbooks. This morning when I jumped in the truck at 5:30, 5:45, the fellow spent the first 5 minutes filling in bits of paper on this spreadsheet. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "That's my logbook." And he's trying to tell me what he's doing. He's trying to explain. I said, "And why isn't all this being done electronically? We know when you go to a restaurant now, the attendant takes your order on a small laptop or an iPad. Why in heaven's name are we using something as antiquated as an old pen and paper system with logbooks? We don't want drivers driving too tired, Acting Deputy President. I speak as a fleet owner when I had a fuel industry business in Tasmania. I brought the first fuel industry B-double, 60,000 litre B-double, and rigid and quad dog combination, 60,000 litres, into that state. How interested do you think I was, Acting Deputy President, in safety? How interested do you think I was to make sure that my trucks, my drivers, my maintenance, my tyres were at the absolute highest level? And that's what the industry wants, and that's the direction in which we need to be going, Acting Deputy President. But it is such a shame that we have had the vitriol and we have had the arguments that we've had in this place, because where we were going to end up with, had the Senate not bravely made the decision it did tonight, and I thank those on the crossbench for joining the government, we were going to end up in this country with 8 or 9 large trucking companies, and at that point, of course, afterwards, the customer base would be at the mercy of those organisations. But I also refer to a statement today by the head of transport for the toll organisation in the Financial Review, in which he made the point they are the largest logistics transport company in this country. The points he made, Acting Deputy President, were interesting. First of all, safety is at the absolute top of their priority tree. Secondly, he wanted to see the abolition of this tribunal. Thirdly, he wanted to see a continuation of viable owner-operators in the business. And he was also saying the opportunity is there for the entire industry to come together. I am privileged to be able to have access to the services of my friend and colleague Mr John Mitchell from Mitchell's Livestock Transport in Western Australia. He is an innovator. He is a person who has designed and has on the roads in Western Australia innovative vehicles for the purposes of livestock transport. He's a person who has been here in Parliament House. I've had him speaking to ministers and to others with his ideas about how we improve effectiveness, efficiency and productivity in the heavy transport industry. He has said to me, "Chris, the opportunity now exists for us to broaden our horizons, Acting Deputy President, to come up with a model involving industry, involving operators, involving regulators, involving inspectors, involving unions, involving drivers. Let us use this opportunity that we have been given tonight in the climate of the exercises undertaken in the last few days by owner-operators who themselves were pushed so far to the back of the wall, where we know it was already causing family discord. We understand, in fact, even a suicide or more has occurred as a result of this. And my final reflection is the fact that even the TWU said to Ms Gillard in 2011, "We want to see some industry people on this tribunal," and she said no. And more recently, the TWU said to the tribunal, let us defer this until next year. The tribunal said no, they've deserved what they got.
Thank you, Senator Bax.